at the kid. We're not looking solely at their thinking or insight, because that's just going to be one piece of what's going on for those kids. The youth will be directly involved, but not the sole focus, and peer influences are going to increase. And therefore, effective treatments are going to have to account for maintaining a high level of accountability. The kids are doing some serious things, and we're going to have to pay attention to public safety. And at the same time, help the schools, help the family, help the peer group, etc. We've all this morning liked these AO slides because they give the apples to apples kinds of comparisons of these things. We know which programs are effective. If I go in for my doctor's office and he says that my knee needs to be operated on, I take it on faith that when I show up in the operating room, they're using the most effective means necessary to operate on my knee, that is guided by good assessment. I take that on faith. I can tell you that the standard of care in social and behavioral medicine is not there yet, anywhere close. This is not, if you go down to your local therapist, you are not necessarily getting the most empirically validated care. But we do know what it is that is effective for these kids. And those things that are the most effective are the things that look across these multiple systems and look across these multiple domains. Something as simple as interagency coordination, which Tolan has done some work with in Chicago, can produce incredible effects. Getting people out of their silos and talking to each other solely can produce some positive effects in terms of reducing juvenile recidivism. And we know the things that don't work. There are certain things that are, again, that are guaranteed to cost us money. And there's a lot of things that we do every day that the jury is still out on, that there's not been randomized control trials. We don't know that these things are effective. And we don't know that they're going to produce effects when the kids are returned out to the community. What we also know is that the validity of these interventions is related heavily on how they are implemented. It is not just the case that because someone hangs the shingle out in front of their office and has gone to a weekend seminar in cognitive behavioral therapy, that what they are doing is effective cognitive behavioral therapy. The good systems, the programs that seem to be working, are ones in which there's a high level of supervision for those therapists doing those behaviors, and there's a lot of emphasis within the organization on fidelity. A study done up in Washington took an agency with 25 folks doing functional family therapy. They grouped them based on the person who was monitoring their fidelity. All of them were saying that they were doing functional family therapy. All of them were trained in functional family therapy. But the person who was monitoring their fidelity rated these people blindly as to their level of competence in terms of the delivery of that model. The folks on the far left of that slide, those 7 therapists, are the ones who are rated as having the lowest level of competence to the model. And their recidivism rate jointly was pushing 30%. The folks on the far left, the far right, are the ones who were rated as the highest in terms of their competence. And their overall recidivism rate was more like 12%. All of them were saying that they were doing functional family therapy. All of them were doing the same thing. But dedicating time and attention to supervision and fidelity to the model made a huge amount of difference. It's not just do we put these empirically validated programs out there, but do we monitor over time that that stays put, that those things are being delivered in that way. Therefore, there's an obligation to the agencies delivering them. And also, another difficulty is monitoring fidelity supervision are often not things written into the Medicaid code. These are activities that agencies have to engage in outside of the funding for the services themselves. And we need to pay attention to that because clearly it makes a difference in terms of the effectiveness of the model. Programs that are most effective seem to be those that are highly structured, have specific goals, focus on changing behavior, are delivered by well-trained staff with strong supervision. Again, a lot of what we've been talking about this morning with the other models. One such model, and just to give you an example of a model and to talk about kind of how involved and how structured these things are, is within the multidimensional treatment foster care. Interventions within multidimensional treatment foster care are implemented in multiple ways. Each child who's referred for treatment foster care is given a family therapist whose sole responsibility is from the beginning of placement, actually prior to the child entering the foster home, that family therapist is engaging that family, talking to them about what the child needs, what the child's history has been, and what it's going to take to return that child to the community. Child's also given an individual and therapist and a skills trainer to focus on those individual contributions, academic supports, And we're going to do this in a short amount of time. We're going to focus all these interventions in a short amount of time. The idea is to present opportunities to support the child in learning and having a successful community experience. What we know from the evidence in terms of the research is that as kids move forward in terms of delinquent behavior, we systematically remove them from those places where they could learn pro-social behavior. In kindergarten, teachers can, with a high degree of accuracy, label which kids are going to penetrate not only into the juvenile system, but into the adult corrections system based on their behavior. And what we do is we systematically remove those kids from normal educational experiences. We group those kids with other kids with similar behavior problems. And again, we know the problem is that they end up on the other end without the skills to engage their pro-social peers. So if I go down to the local delinquency holding area, if I walk down to Hillcrest down the way here, and I ask them, where do the pro-social kids, where do the kids on honor roll hang out on the weekend? They'll tell me that either they don't know or they think it's boring. And the truth is they don't have the skills to engage in those kinds of activities. The example I use in training is if you walk into a bowling alley, a nice pro-social thing to do with your friends on a weekend. There's no list of rules saying how to engage in this activity. And where else in your life do you walk in and the first thing you do is take off your shoes and put on somebody else's shoes that are wet and humid and just been sprayed down? There's no sign telling you how to do this, but this is something that you need to do. If we've systematically removed delinquent kids from those opportunities to learn how to engage in these behaviors, it's not surprising that on the other end they don't know how to do that. And so within treatment foster care, what we're going to do is put the kids in a foster parent home with either by themselves or with one other kid. We're going to heavily supervise them. We're going to wrap a lot of these services around the kids so they can get out and learn in vivo how to do those activities. The placement is going to be, again, with foster parents out in the community. They're going to attend a public school. The staffing is going to be consistent with a high degree of parental monitoring. Even though they're in a foster home and we're going to make this as normal as possible, we start with a high degree of supervision. These are kids who are committing felonies. And we're going to teach the foster parents, and we're going to train the parents how to deal with the child's return in the same way that we support the foster parents in the child's placement during that time. While they're there, we're going to provide everyone with a point and level system. So much of what goes on within a parenting intervention has to do with correcting behavior. And if what we're trying to do is correct behavior based on relationship, it's not going to work when a child is placed outside of the home. These kids have been, girls who came into our girls study were placed at an average age of about 14 and had an average of over 15 transitions in caregivers during their lifetime. They're not going to see adults as people who are stable and safe and reliable. And what we need to do is present them with a way to get feedback on their behavior that's not emotionally charged, that's not mood-driven, but is driven by the child's behavior and what it is that they're bringing forward. A point and level system is our way of doing that, to give them feedback on a daily basis on their behavior and whether or not they're doing adult-required and adult-preferred kinds of behavior. The treatment team then is going to meet, and again, this is kind of building off of some of the remarks earlier, is to bring these people out of their silos. And rather than sending one person out for family therapy, someone else out for parent training, someone else out for individual therapy, what we want to do is house all these people together as a treatment team and let them coordinate and have all those interventions be reliably intervened. We can teach a kid how to be assertive. We might teach a parent how to do limit setting, but if we do that simultaneously and then send them home on a home visit to interact for the first time, you're going to have an explosion. Well, those things might both be important to do, but what we want to do is separate them in time and do them in a sequence that's going to make sense. The foster parents also, one of the challenges we have is we're trying to provide these services out in the community and with foster parents, and foster parenting by and large is not something that's looked upon as a very professional role. Our incentives tend to run backwards, that as kids get better, we decrease the funding for foster parents, and they're taking on kids with high levels of behavioral and mental health needs. They're the ones actually doing the day-to-day work. I have the advantage that I get out of my bed in the morning and I don't have to be at work for several hours. Foster parents get out of bed in the morning and their work has already started. Their work is already down watching TV and making a mess, and they need to get right into it. And so supporting those foster parents, one of the questions a moment ago was about the 9 to 5-ness of these things, and especially with kids. Kids, we know when they act out. Kids act out, by and large, before school happens, immediately after school,